My mother made a fake Instagram account to convince my little sister our late dad was still alive, and the outcome was so much worse than she imagined. When my dad died, I didn't even care, because I was 16 years old, while my younger sister Ella was 9. So I channeled everything I had into making sure she was okay. For the first 2 years, I felt like shut. The only thing that actually brought me any joy was sleeping, because before I closed my eyes, I hoped to dream of my dad, and it usually worked. But Ella didn't know any of this, because whenever she was near, I'd plaster on this freakishly happy or stoic persona. I needed her to think that no matter what happened, her big brother was always there for her, especially since my mom was basically doing the exact opposite of me. She coped by lying in bed all day and refusing to get out. Then, nighttime would come. And the day after the funeral, she started this ritual of inviting a new guy home almost every single night. It was as if she was trying to be as loud as possible, shrieking like a donkey while she reached, well, obviously I tried to talk to her about it, but every time it was the same response. "I pushed you out of my VAJJ, and this is how you speak to me," she'd yell at the top of her lungs. So now, I hope you can see why being there for Ella was my top priority. I never knew how hard it would backfire, because Ella was the quiet type, the type to see the best in everyone even if there wasn't any. So when our mom started using her grief against her, it worked straight away. For context, Ella had a lot of trouble believing that our dad really had passed. "Are you sure you and mom aren't just joking?" she'd always ask me. Even as we lowered his casket into the grave, she was smiling and waiting for the ball to drop. But on Christmas Day, his favorite holiday of all time, he still hadn't showed up. And that's when things shifted a little. And I say a little because instead of believing he was just messing around, she believed he actually was missing, but still alive. She'd spend her weekends going around his favorite spots, like the local golfing range or cigarette corner store, with his lottery ticket. To put it simply, he won the lottery 20 years before he died. It was only like $3,000, but he kept it beside his nightstand and stared at it sometimes, trying to rebirth it into existence. So now Ella was waving it around, thinking that he would simply catch a glimpse of his beloved lottery ticket and come out from wherever he was missing. Obviously, it was completely irrational. But if you've ever experienced raw and intense grief, then you know just how much it can drive you to the brink of insanity, especially for a child. I tried to shut it down myself by distracting her with Ikerly or Victorious, and sometimes it would make her laugh. But then right afterwards, she'd always start screaming and say, "Dad would have loved this part," before bursting into tears and running back outside to look for Dad. After the 10th time of this happening, I went through with the most unhinged plan in human history. I asked our mother for help. She nodded and told Ella to sit down and watch iCarly. I didn't know what was happening, but as soon as Ella started crying, she shouted, "You were worded, bitch, your dad is effing gone. He's never coming back. Not for me, not for Blake, my name, and especially not for you." She then proceeded to light up a cigarette right beside her and stomp upstairs to get ready for her night out. Honestly, I wanted to knock that woman out with my fist until she met the same fate as my dad, but unfortunately that woman was my mother, so I refrained. Instead, I pulled Ella onto my lap. She wasn't even crying. "Honey, your mother isn't taking this very well. Please don't listen to her." "I know," she interrupted. "It's not her fault. It's our dad's. He should have come home by now." Her unwavering innocence made me tear up, and after she fell asleep, I tucked her into my bed and lay beside her. When I woke up the next day, Ella was gone. I searched the house hoping she was just hiding, but she was nowhere to be found. But it wasn't until 10 minutes had passed that I really started panicking, because when I went into my mom's room to let her know, I expected her to be somewhat worried, or at least ask if I'd checked everywhere. Instead, she just laughed and said, "I know," before going back to cuddle her boy toy of the night. And it was a Saturday, so it's not like Ella could have just gone to school. But luckily, I only had to spend 20 minutes driving around looking for her, because just 2 miles away, I found her. She was on the side of the road, completely blue. I parked and ran over, but her tiny self was hard and cold. I fell to my knees and threw up right beside her. Desperate to find out what the F was going on, I grabbed the iPhone that was sticking out of her pocket. Suddenly, everything became clear. An account with my dad's name and face on it had been texting her on Instagram, and, using his profile, told her that he was walking home. So Ella had spent all night searching for him. My head was spinning while I inspected the profile. That's when I noticed he was following just one person, and that person was my mother. I instantly knew she was behind this. I stayed with Marcus, my friend from youth group, and his family for 2 weeks before Mom started her campaign. Her voice honey sweet when she called the Riveras, but venom-laced when she spoke to me. First came the tearful phone calls to Marcus's parents. "I'm so worried about Blake," she sobbed to Mrs. Rivera, a performance worthy of an Oscar. "He's not processing his grief in a healthy way. The therapist said he might be having delusions." There was no therapist, just another lie in her web of deception. But Mrs. Rivera, kind as she was, started giving me concerned looks over breakfast, her eyes following me as I pushed my cereal around the bowl. Then came the wellness checks from Mom's friends. They'd stop by the Rivera house, always when Marcus's parents were home, bearing casseroles and concerned expressions that never quite reached their eyes. "Your mother misses you terribly," Mrs. Chen from down the street told me, squeezing my arm with her bony fingers. "She's falling apart without you." I nodded and thanked her for the lasagna, saying nothing as the scent of garlic and judgment filled the air. The final straw came when Trent, Mom's latest boyfriend, showed up at the grocery store where I worked part-time. I was stocking shelves when his shadow fell over me like a bad omen. "Your mom's worried sick about you," he said, towering over me. His cologne so strong it made my eyes water. His biceps strained against his tight t-shirt as he leaned closer. "You should come home." "I'm good, thanks," I replied, continuing to stack cans of soup, the metallic clanking matching the rhythm of my racing heart. He stepped closer, invading my space. "Listen, kid, your mom told me everything about how you've been making up stories, about how you can't accept what happened to your sister." I looked up at him, meeting his gaze directly. "Did she tell you she made a fake Instagram account pretending to be my dead father?" Trent's face hardened, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features before he masked it with bravado. "See, that's exactly the kind of crazy shat she warned me about. You need help, man. I have proof," I said, though I wasn't sure if that was still true. Mom was systematically destroying every piece of evidence I had, erasing her digital footprints like a criminal covering their tracks. Trent laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the empty aisle. "Sure you do." He leaned in, voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Here's some advice. Drop this whole thing before you make it worse for yourself. Your mom's been through enough." After he left, my manager Layla pulled me aside, her dark eyes concerned. "Everything okay, Blake?" That guy seemed pretty intense. I forced a smile that felt like cracking glass. "Just my mom's boyfriend checking on me. It's fine." But it wasn't fine. I knew Mom was just getting started, that this was only the opening move in her twisted game. That night, I borrowed Marcus's laptop and created a new email account, then forwarded all my evidence to it, encrypting everything with a password only I would know. I needed to be smarter than Mom. I needed to think several steps ahead in this deadly chess match. The next day, I skipped school and took a bus downtown to see Mr. Ramirez, Dad's old friend who worked at an electronics repair shop. The familiar smell of solder and coffee hit me as I walked in, bringing back memories of Dad bringing me here as a kid. Mr. Ramirez had always liked me, and more importantly, he never liked Mom, seeing through her facade years before anyone else. "Blake, long time no see, kid." His face fell when he saw mine, the grief etched into every line. "I heard about Ella. I'm so sorry, mijo." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat threatening to choke me. "Thanks. I actually need your help with something." I explained about Ella's iPad and phone, how I needed to recover any deleted messages or data from her cloud accounts. I didn't tell him why, but something in my expression must have conveyed the urgency, the desperation behind my request. Mr. Ramirez scratched his salt and pepper beard, his eyes narrowing in thought. "Data recovery is tricky without the actual devices, but he pulled out a drawer and handed me a small USB drive, its surface worn from use. This has some recovery software software that might help if you can get your hands on them, or if they were backed up to a cloud account you can access. I thanked him and slipped the drive into my pocket. Its weight insignificant, but its potential enormous. As I was leaving, he called after me, his voice cutting through the electronic hum of the shop. Blake, whatever's going on, be careful, okay? Your dad would want you safe. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. Careful was my middle name now, my only defense against Mom's machinations. When I got back to the Riveras, Mrs. Rivera was waiting for me in the kitchen, arms crossed over her floral apron, the smell of chocolate chip cookies doing nothing to soften her expression. The school called. You weren't in class today. I apologized, making up a story about needing some time alone to think about Ella, the lies slipping easily from my lips. It wasn't entirely untrue. Ella was all I thought about these days, her face haunting my dreams. I understand, honey, but she hesitated, wiping her hands on a dishcloth, avoiding my eyes. Your mother called again. She's talking about filing a missing persons report if you don't come home soon. I almost laughed, the bitter sound catching in my throat. Mom knew exactly where I was. This was just another manipulation tactic, another way to force my hand. I'm 17, turning 18 in 3 months, I said, calculating the days until freedom in my head. I'll figure something out before then. Mrs. Rivera looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Blake, we love having you here, but we can't get in the middle of a family situation. If your mother insists, I nodded, understanding the unspoken message beneath her kind words. I couldn't stay here much longer. The Riveras were good people, but they weren't equipped to handle the hurricane that was my mother. That night I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with possibilities and dead ends. I kept thinking about what Mom had said at the funeral, words I'd tried to forget. She was always his favorite, she'd hissed as they lowered the casket, her nails digging into my arm. The words replayed in my head, along with the image of Ella's blue, lifeless body on the side of the road, her favorite pink mittens still clutched in her frozen hands. I needed to understand Mom better if I was going to outmaneuver her, and I needed allies who knew her true nature. The next day after school, I went to see Dad's sister, Aunt Sophia. We hadn't been close since Dad died. Mom had made sure of that, spreading rumors and creating conflicts, but she'd always loved Ella and me, bringing us presents even when Mom told her not to come around. Aunt Sophia opened the door of her apartment and immediately pulled me into a hug, her familiar perfume enveloping me like a security blanket. Oh, Blake, I've been so worried about you. Her apartment was small but cozy, filled with photos of the family, including several of Dad and Ella at the beach last summer, their identical smiles frozen in time. I felt a lump form in my throat as I spotted Ella's handprint in clay on the bookshelf, a Mother's Day gift she'd made for Sophia when Mom had been too busy to accept it. I'm sorry I haven't been in touch, I said, accepting the mug of hot chocolate she pressed into my hands. Mom made it difficult. Sophia's expression darkened, the family resemblance to Dad suddenly striking. Your mother and I have never seen eye to eye, especially after what she did to your father. I blinked, the hot chocolate suddenly tasting bitter on my tongue. What do you mean, what she did to Dad? Sophia looked surprised, her eyebrows rising toward her hairline. You don't know? I assumed? Well, I guess you were young. She sat me down on her worn floral couch and told me everything, her voice low and urgent. How Mom had catfished Dad multiple times during their marriage, creating fake profiles to test his loyalty or to manipulate him into doing what she wanted. How she'd driven away his friends with elaborate lies, isolating him from anyone who might see through her facade. How Dad had finally decided to leave her just weeks before his unexpected heart attack, the stress of her manipulation finally taking its toll. Your father was planning to take you and Ella, Sophia said softly, reaching out to squeeze my hand. He was meeting with a lawyer the day he died. He couldn't bear to leave you with her, but he needed to make sure he had a case for custody. The room seemed to spin around me, the photos on the wall blurring as tears filled my eyes. Did Mom know he was planning to leave? Sophia nodded grimly, her lips pressed into a thin line. They had a huge fight about it the night before. Your mother threatened to destroy him if he tried to take you kids. Said she'd make sure he never saw either of you again. I felt sick, my stomach churning with the implications. Could Mom have? No, I couldn't go there. Not yet. Not without proof. Blake, why are you asking about this now? Sophia's eyes narrowed, her gaze penetrating. What's going on? I told her everything. The fake Instagram account, the messages luring Ella out, Mom's strange behavior before and after, the way she'd said, I know, when I told her Ella was missing. Sophia's face grew paler with each detail, her hand covering her mouth in horror. We need to go to the police, she said when I finished, already reaching for her phone. I tried. They don't believe me. Mom deleted the account, and she's convinced everyone I'm just a grieving, unstable teenager. Officer Martinez was sympathetic, but said there wasn't enough evidence to pursue it. Sophia squeezed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Then we'll find more evidence. Your mother's done this before, Blake. She'll do it again. People like her can't help themselves. For the first time since finding Ella, I felt a glimmer of hope breaking through the darkness. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. Sophia let me stay with her, which bought me some time to gather evidence and plan my next move. Mom was furious, of course, her rage barely contained beneath a veneer of maternal concern. She showed up at Sophia's apartment the very next day, pounding on the door and screaming about parental alienation and family interference, her voice carrying through the entire building. Sophia refused to let her in, standing firm despite Mom's threats. He's almost 18, Caroline. He can decide where he wants to stay. He's my son, Mom shrieked, her face contorted with rage. You've always been jealous of me. First you tried to steal my husband, now my son. I recorded the entire exchange on my phone, adding it to my growing collection of evidence, the audio capturing every venomous word. After Mom left, Sophia looked shaken, her hands trembling as she made us tea. She's always been unstable, but this is worse than before. I'm worried about what she might do next. I nodded, stirring honey into my tea. She thinks she's getting away with what she did to Ella, and maybe she is, but I was making progress, slowly but surely. Using Mr. Ramirez's software and Ella's Apple ID, which I still remembered from setting up her devices, I managed to recover some of the deleted messages from her iCloud backup. Not all of them, but enough to show a pattern of manipulation, the fake Dad account, gradually convincing Ella to meet him that fateful night. I also started interviewing people who knew Dad, building a case about Mom's history of creating fake accounts and manipulating people. Most were reluctant to get involved, fear of Mom's retaliation evident in their shifty gazes and nervous laughs, but a few shared stories that confirmed what Aunt Sophia had told me. Dad's old golf buddy Steven told me about a time Mom had created a fake Facebook profile of an ex-girlfriend to test Dad's loyalty, the memory still making him uncomfortable years later. Your dad showed me the messages. It was messed up, man. She copied this woman's entire life, photos and all. Had your dad convinced his ex was trying to get back with him, just to see what he'd do? Who does that kind of thing? Each story was another piece of the puzzle, another bit of evidence showing this wasn't an isolated incident, but a pattern of behavior stretching back years. Then I discovered something that made my blood run cold, ice spreading through my veins as I stared at my cousin's phone. My cousin Peyton, Aunt Sophia's daughter, showed me messages she'd been getting from an Instagram account claiming to be our grandfather, who had died last year, his ashes scattered in the lake where he used to fish. I know it's not really Grandpa, Peyton said, rolling her eyes as she scrolled through the messages. I'm 13, not stupid, but it's creepy, right? Someone pretending to be him? The messages were eerily similar to what Dad had sent Ella, friendly at first, then gradually trying to arrange a meeting at the lake, promising a special surprise if she came alone. I showed them to Sophia, who immediately called her ex-husband to make sure Peyton stayed with him for a while, her voice tight with controlled panic. Then we took the messages to the police, the evidence mounting into something they couldn't ignore. Officer Martinez, the same officer who had been at the scene when I found Ella, listened more carefully this time, her professional demeanor softening as she reviewed the screenshots. This is concerning, she admitted, looking through the messages, her brow furrowed. But it's still not enough to prove your mother was behind the account that messaged Ella or that she intended any harm. We need direct evidence linking her to these accounts. But it's the same pattern, I insisted, frustration building in my chest. First Dad, then Ella, now Peyton. She's escalating, targeting family members with fake accounts of dead loved ones. What more do you need? Martinez gave me a sympathetic look, her eyes tired behind her glasses. We need more direct evidence connecting your mother to these accounts. Keep documenting everything and be careful. Sometimes people like this, they slip up eventually. On my way out of the station, I ran into Trent in the parking lot, his massive frame leaning against a pickup truck. He looked uncomfortable seeing me there, shifting his weight like a guilty child. What are you doing here? He demanded, his voice gruff, but lacking its earlier confidence. Just talking to Officer Martinez, I said casually, watching his reaction. About Mom's habit of creating fake social media accounts to manipulate people. It's kind of her signature move. Something flickered across his face. Doubt, maybe, or recognition. Your mom said you'd say crazy stuff like that you're obsessed with social media or something. Did she? What else did she say about me? I stepped closer, genuinely curious about what lies she'd fed him. He shifted his weight, avoiding my eyes. That you've been making up stories since your dad died. That you blame her for everything. That you're jealous of her moving on. I nodded slowly, recognizing Mom's typical deflection tactics. And you believed her, just like that, without questioning why a 17-year-old would suddenly start making up elaborate stories about his mother? I mean, he hesitated, uncertainty creeping into his voice. She's pretty convincing. And you gotta admit, the whole fake account thing sounds pretty far-fetched. Yeah, she is convincing. That's how she gets away with it. I started to walk away, then turned back, struck by a sudden thought. By the way, how did you two meet? Trent looked surprised by the question, his brow furrowing. Instagram. She messaged me out of the blue, said she'd seen my profile and thought I was interesting. Why? I smiled grimly, letting the implication hang in the air. You might want to verify that story with her. Ask her about Maya while you're at it. The seed of doubt I planted must have taken root, because 3 days later, Trent called me, his voice agitated on the other end of the line. I broke up with your mom, he said without preamble, the words tumbling out in a rush. She went crazy, started accusing me of all sorts of things, said I was cheating on her with someone named Maya. I've never even met anyone named Maya. Let me guess, I said, a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. She showed you messages from this Maya person? Maybe screenshots of conversations you supposedly had with her? Yeah, how'd you know? Wait, I could almost hear the realization dawning, the pieces falling into place. You think she made up this Maya person? Created a fake account to trap me? I know she did. It's what she does. She creates problems so she can be the solution. Manufactures drama so she can be the victim. It's her playbook. There was a long pause, just the sound of his breathing on the line. Jesus, I think you might be right about her, kid. She's not right in the head. Another ally, another piece of evidence. But Mom was getting desperate, which made her dangerous, like a cornered animal ready to strike at anything that moved. She started spreading rumors about me throughout our small town, that I was on substances, that I was having a mental breakdown, that I'd always been jealous of Ella and resented the attention she got. She even managed to get me fired from my grocery store job, her poison reaching further than I'd anticipated. My manager called me in, looking uncomfortable as he fidgeted with a pen. I'm sorry, Blake, but we've had some complaints. Customers saying you've been acting erratically, making them uncomfortable. What customers? I demanded, anger flaring hot in my chest. He wouldn't say, but I knew. Mom had friends everywhere, people who believed her sob stories about her troubled son, her maternal concern masking her malice. Without a job, I had no income. Without income, I couldn't save up to get my own place when I turned 18. Mom was systematically cutting off all my options, forcing me to come home where she could control the narrative, and me. Then she escalated again, moving from psychological warfare to physical intimidation. I went to move my car one morning and found all 4 tires slashed, the rubber gaping like wounds. There was no note, no evidence, but I knew. This was Mom, sending a message, letting me know she could reach me anywhere. I borrowed money from Aunt Sophia to fix 2 of the tires, enough to make the car drivable. But now I was constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering what Mom would do next, the weight of her invisible presence pressing down on me. The answer came a week later, when 2 police officers showed up at Sophia's apartment, their expressions grim as they asked for me. Blake Anderson? One asked, his hand resting casually near his holster. We need you to come with us to answer some questions about a break-in at your mother's residence. My stomach dropped, a cold dread spreading through me. I haven't been to that house in weeks. Your mother says otherwise. She has security footage of someone matching your description entering through a window last night. Several items of value are missing. I looked at Aunt Sophia, panic rising in my throat. She immediately grabbed her keys, her face set with determination. I'm coming with him, and we're calling a lawyer. My nephew hasn't left this apartment in days. At the station, they showed me the footage, grainy but clear enough to see someone who did look like me. Same height, similar build, wearing a hoodie I owned, climbing through the kitchen window. But it wasn't me. I'd been at Sophia's all night, working on recovering more data from Ella's accounts, and she confirmed it, her testimony unwavering. Besides, I said, pointing to a detail they'd missed, I still have a key to the house. Why would I break in through a window when I could just walk in the front door? The officers exchanged glances, doubt creeping into their expressions. Your mother says you returned your key when you moved out. I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the sterile interrogation room. I never returned any key. Check my keychain if you don't believe me. Sure enough, my house key was still there, the familiar worn brass, a silent witness to my innocence. The case against me quickly fell apart, especially when Sophia's lawyer pointed out that the timestamp on the security footage showed I would have been breaking in during the exact time I was at a movie with Marcus, a fact easily verified by the theater's records and several witnesses who'd seen us there. The charges were dropped, but Mom had achieved her goal, creating more doubt about my credibility, painting me as unstable and vindictive, the kind of troubled teen who might break into his mother's house out of spite. I needed to change tactics. Fighting Mom directly wasn't working. She was too good at manipulation, too practiced at turning situations to her advantage, always 3 steps ahead in this twisted game. So I decided to hit her at her own game, to use her playbook against her. Using everything I'd learned about Mom's patterns, I created an anonymous blog detailing a story of parental manipulation and psychological abuse. I changed all the names and some identifying details, but kept the core truth. A mother who created fake social media accounts to manipulate her children, leading to tragedy. I included redacted screenshots of the messages to Ella and Peyton, interviews with people who had experienced similar manipulation from the mother, without naming Mom directly, an analysis from a psychologist about this type of behavior, its patterns and warning signs. I posted it on Reddit first, under the username TruthSeeker17, then other platforms. It went viral almost immediately, the story striking a chord with readers who recognized the subtle signs of manipulation from their own lives. People started reaching out with similar stories, the comment section filling with accounts of parental psychological abuse. Some even recognized the pattern and messaged me privately. Is this about Caroline Anderson? Because she did something similar to my daughter 2 years ago at summer camp. The community response was overwhelming, a tidal wave of support and shared experiences. People were horrified, sympathetic, and most importantly, they believed the story, seeing through the careful anonymization to the truth beneath. Mom, of course, saw it immediately. She called Sophia's apartment in a rage, her voice shrill enough that I could hear it from across the room without speakerphone. I know what you're doing, she screamed when I answered, her breathing heavy with fury. You think you're so clever with your little internet story. Take it down or I'll sue you for defamation. Sue me for what? I asked calmly, a strange sense of power flowing through me for the first time in years. I never mentioned your name. I never said it was you. The story could be about anyone. Everyone knows it's about me, she hissed, confirming her guilt more effectively than any evidence could have. Do they? Why would they think that unless it's true? I countered, the logic irrefutable. She hung up, but the damage was done. People were connecting the dots, the whispers spreading through our community like wildfire. Her friends started looking at her differently, their eyes lingering a bit too long, their smiles not quite reaching switching their eyes. Invitations dried up. The sympathy she'd cultivated as the grieving mother began to erode, replaced by suspicion and distance. One of her longtime friends, Willow, even reached out to me. "I've known your mother for 15 years, she said when we met for coffee at a cafe far from Mom's usual haunts. I always thought she was dramatic, but I never imagined this. The things you described in that post, I've seen her do some of them. I just never put it all together." The social isolation hit Mom hard. She thrived on attention and sympathy, and now both were in short supply, her supply of narcissistic fuel running dangerously low. Her behavior became more erratic, more desperate. She started drinking heavily, calling me at all hours to alternately threaten and beg me to come home, her voice slurring as she cycled through rage and self-pity. "You're calling me, Blake," she sobbed in one voicemail, the sound of ice clinking against glass in the background. "First your father leaves me, then Ella, now you. What did I do to deserve this? After everything I sacrificed for you." The question was so absurd I almost laughed, a bitter sound catching in my throat. What did she do? She manipulated, lied, and ultimately caused the death of my sister. And she still couldn't see it, still cast herself as the victim in a tragedy of her own making. 6 months after Ella's death, I turned 18, the milestone birthday passing with little celebration, but enormous significance. The first thing I did was file for legal independence and petition for full custody of Ella's belongings, which Mom had been holding hostage since her death. Mom fought it, of course, hiring an expensive lawyer to argue that I was mentally unstable and incapable of making rational decisions. But my case was strong. I had documented evidence of neglect and psychological abuse, plus testimony from Aunt Sophia, Trent, and several others about Mom's manipulation and erratic behavior, a pattern stretching back years. The court sided with me. I was legally free from Mom's control, and all of Ella's things, and Dad's, which had been left to her in his will, would be mine, a small victory in an ocean of loss. When I went to collect Ella's belongings from the house, Mom tried one last desperate move. I arrived to find her in the backyard, a small fire burning in a metal trash can, orange flames licking at the sky. She was throwing in photos, papers, Dad's old sweater, Ella's drawings, anything she could grab to hurt me one last time. "If I can't have them, no one can," she slurred, clearly hammered at 10 in the morning, her eyes wild and unfocused. I started toward her, rage building in my chest, but Mrs. Patel from next door hit me to it. She'd come over when she saw the smoke rising above the fence, concern overriding her usual reluctance to get involved. "Caroline, stop this right now," she said firmly, grabbing Mom's arm with surprising strength. "You're going to set the whole neighborhood on fire, and these things aren't yours to destroy." While they argued, I slipped into the house, the familiar smell of home now tainted with alcohol and neglect. Most of Dad's important things, his watch, his golf clubs, his journals, were still in the attic, untouched. Mom had been too hammered to climb the ladder, her self-destruction inadvertently preserving what mattered most. I packed everything I could fit into my car, filling the trunk and back seat with memories. Ella's favorite stuffed rabbit, her collection of seashells, Dad's old records, photo albums from before Mom started editing our family history. As I was leaving, Mom staggered up to me, reeking of alcohol and smoke, her once beautiful face now haggard with bitterness. "You think you've won," she hissed, swaying slightly on her feet, "but you'll never prove what happened to Ella. Never." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was a shell of the woman who had once terrified me. Her power over me evaporated like morning dew. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes stained, her eyes bloodshot and vacant. She'd lost everything, her daughter, her boyfriend, her friends, her reputation, and still couldn't see her own role in the destruction. "I don't need to prove it anymore," I said quietly, the truth settling over me like a warm blanket. "You're punishing yourself better than any court could." I drove away without looking back, Dad's lottery ticket and Ella's favorite stuffed animal on the passenger seat beside me, silent companions on the road to whatever came next. It took weeks to sort through all of Dad and Ella's things, each item a memory, each memory both painful and precious. I found old photos I'd never seen, letters Dad had written but never sent, Ella's diary where she documented her search for our father, her childish handwriting growing more desperate with each entry. And then, tucked into a box of Dad's old papers, I found a handwritten letter from Ella, dated just a week before she died, its edges already softening with age. "Dear Blake," it began, the sight of her handwriting bringing fresh tears to my eyes. "Thank you for always protecting me. I know Dad is watching over us, even if we can't see him. I hope someday we'll all be together again. I love you more than all the stars. Your sister, Ella." I sat on the floor of my new apartment, a small studio I'd rented with help from Aunt Sophia, and cried for the first time since finding Ella on that cold roadside, great heaving sobs that seemed to come from the very core of my being. That night, I placed Ella's letter on my nightstand, right next to Dad's lottery ticket, these small talismans of a family that once was. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years, the weight of guilt and anger beginning to lift. Mom was right about one thing. I couldn't prove beyond a legal doubt what she'd done to Ella, but I'd exposed her for who she really was. I'd made sure she couldn't hurt anyone else the way she'd hurt us. And most importantly, I'd kept my promise to protect Ella, even if it came too late. In my dreams that night, I saw them both, Dad and Ella, walking together in a sunlit field, waiting for me. Not now, but someday. For the first time since Dad died, I slept soundly through the night, no longer afraid of what tomorrow might bring. The following morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through my blinds, casting golden patterns across the small studio apartment. For a moment, I just lay there, watching dust motes dance in the light, feeling strangely lighter myself. The weight I'd carried for so long hadn't disappeared completely, but it had shifted somehow, becoming more bearable. I made coffee in the tiny kitchenette, the rich aroma filling the space as I looked around at the boxes still waiting to be unpacked. Dad's golf trophies peeked out from one, while Ella's collection of painted rocks sat atop another. These fragments of our past would help build my future, reminders of what I'd lost, but also what I fought for. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Sophia, checking in as she did every morning now. I smiled as I typed back, grateful for her steady presence in my life. She'd become the family I needed, the support I'd never had from Mom. Outside my window, the neighborhood was coming alive, people walking dogs, kids waiting for school buses, a mail carrier making his rounds, normal life continuing as it always did. And for the first time in years, I felt ready to join it, to step back into the world not just as a survivor of tragedy, but as someone with a future worth building. I picked up Dad's lottery ticket from my nightstand, running my thumb over its worn surface. "I think I finally won," I whispered to it, tucking it carefully into my wallet. Not the money kind of winning, but something far more valuable. Truth, freedom, and the chance to start again.